Peace comes from a changed attitude. When you see humans as fundamentally selfish and whole nations as fundamentally evil, then all you have available to change their behavior is threats and bribes. Peace comes from a different place. To chart a course for the future of our nation's military and foreign policy, I'll return once again to the words of John F. Kennedy. He said, "America's weapons are not provocative. They are carefully controlled. They are designed to deter and capable of selective use. Our military forces are committed to peace and disciplined in self-restraint. Our diplomats are instructed to avoid unnecessary irritants and purely rhetorical hostility. But the danger of reckless escalation and nuclear brinksmanship is real and present. I therefore call on our present leadership to adopt President Kennedy's maxims and to start de-escalating right now. I call on every American to join in a new peace movement, to make your voices heard, to reject the insanity of escalation, and to celebrate no longer the wartime president, but a president who keeps the peace."
You know, when I pay attention to the words spoken in politics, when I listen to him, I just manage to keep on listening. And that when you speak, it really feels like you're speaking from the heart, from experience, from seeing it, from living it, and really believing it. And I just think that that's something rare in politics. This transition that you've made recently from the Democratic ticket to becoming an independent, why'd you do that?
I felt in the initial parts of the campaign that my job was to bring the Democratic Party back to its natal values. But there were people around me, like Dennis Kucinich, who was running the campaign, who was saying from the beginning that the Democratic Party is now controlled by big corporations, by the military-industrial complex, and they would rather have Trump as president again than you as their candidate. And that's what they did to Bernie Sanders. That's what they did to Tulsi Gabbard. That's what they did to James Webb. Progressive people who challenge this corrupt merger of state and corporate power that now controls both political parties, what they call the uniparty, that cabal would never allow me to be the Democratic nominee.
Right now, there's 12 to 15,000 people coming in through the southern border. As president, what if you were president of the United States? What is your stance on? Would you call it an invasion?
I would shut down the border and do it immediately, even if it took deploying the military at this point. And what we need is, we need asylum court judges. There's a backlog on the asylum courts of 7 years. There's something like 4,000 cases. We need to be able to adjudicate those at the border. We're letting the Mexican drug cartels dictate and control our immigration policy, and there's been 7 million have come across in the last 3 years, as you point. And there's the legal immigration during that period was 3.1 million. The cartels have brought in double what legal immigration, the people who are waiting in line. And we need to put an end to it and do it very quickly. And I was against building the wall.
Are you still?
No. Now I think it was absolutely important. You don't need to build a wall 2,200 miles from San Diego to Brownsville, Texas. The populated areas, you definitely need a physical barrier, and it's got to be a wall. When I went down there, there's about 27 or more huge gaps in the wall. Some of them are big, some of them are little. Sitting in a pile there was tens of millions of dollars of construction material. That was the missing parts of the wall. So Mayorkas did come down. He was the head of DHS, for people who don't know. He's in charge of protecting our borders. Saw what was happening and said, okay, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to patch those places in the fence. But he said, I don't want to use Trump's wall. So we're going to order new material. Mayorkas needed different wall so that nobody would call it the Trump wall. It could now be the Biden wall. And, that shows a level of pettiness. Is it any wonder that as America has waged violence throughout the world, violence has overtaken us in our own nation? It has not come as an invasion. It has come from within. Our bombs, our drones, our armies are incapable of stopping the gun violence on our streets and schools or domestic violence in our homes. I see the same link here as my father and Martin Luther King saw about the Vietnam War. They believed that we could not have warfare abroad without bringing that violence home to our attitudes, to our communities.
I felt like somebody from the heart was telling me this eloquent story that goes back to the 60s, 50s. And as a journalist, covered Iraq, I was in Panama, I've covered the narco wars. I mean, I've covered way too many wars for just one generation. So it was like kind of painfully nostalgic to realize that there was a point in American history when we weren't starting wars. And to have a politician today to remind Americans, I think it's really important to remind people of their own history, because it's easy to sum up history as one war after another, when in fact, often the wars are the aberration.
I have a sense of clarity and honesty from RFK Jr. and his uncle could very well have been the last president who I felt I could trust to pursue peace.
Hey guys, Amaryllis Kennedy here, campaign director for Kennedy 24 and steward of this national movement to reclaim our American dream. Times are tough and that affects everyone. But US household budgets are disproportionately managed by women. It's moms who are up in the middle of the night, hunched over the kitchen table, searching for an extra dollar so that they can actually stretch their grocery budget and make their kids' favorite meal, even though the price of food keeps going up. And it's moms who are watching the cost of childcare go through the ceiling and wondering how on earth they're gonna keep affording it, even though their salary is not keeping pace with inflation. And what if they can't? More than 2 million parents had to quit their jobs last year because they couldn't afford that care. And single-parent households are paying 36% of their income on childcare. And it's not just childcare, it's healthcare too. It's moms who are holding their kids in the throes of an asthma attack or searching for coupons to pay for prescriptions to treat their kids' chronic diseases. An epidemic of health problems, by the way, affecting our kids at higher rates than any other country, and an epidemic that the government refuses to prioritize funding to end. But they'll prioritize war funding, and that affects moms too. It's moms who go and pull out a blanket to keep their kids warm because the heating pill is suddenly too expensive. Why? Because our leaders decided to go and blow up the Nord Stream pipeline and approve a slew of export licenses for liquid natural gas so that it could be sent overseas for profit instead of being kept right here to heat our own family homes. It's so often moms who take the heaviest brunt of government mismanagement. It was moms who bore the brunt of the lockdowns, and I know because I was one of them. My husband and I always joke that if you didn't have little kids at home during COVID, you have no idea how hard the lockdowns were, right? Teaching kids reading and algebra while trying to look professional on Zoom. And even after the kids were finally allowed to go back to school, way after the data all indicated that they should. Even then, it's still us moms who are helping our kids play catch up with homework and dealing with language delays and lingering anxiety and depression. Kids who lost time with their friends and lost time in the classroom and lost time just being kids. And coming out of all of that, it's really no surprise that it's moms who are determined to finally save up and give their kids some more space, let their families grow into a home of their own. And they're scouring Zillow and Redfin and finally finding a house that they can afford, only to have it undercut at the last minute by an all-cash offer from a hedge fund. The same hedge funds, by the way, who are buying up the hospitals and closing down the maternity units to maximize profit. And how has that turned out? We now have the highest maternal mortality rate in the rich world. Another brutal cost levied by the corporate capture of our government and borne by women and families and our babies. And some of those pregnancies never even happen at all because more and more women look at the staggering price of having children, unaffordable housing, unaffordable food, unaffordable childcare, and many who desperately want kids feel forced to give up that dream because they just don't have the money. Too many women in this country are not only shouldering those big burdens, but they're doing it alone. 2.8 million children have had a parent deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria. And they're doing it alone because the privatized prisons and the corporations that they make rich lock up their partners. 11% of American children, 28% of African American children will experience having a parent locked up during their childhood. And after all that scrimping and saving and extra work that all of these American moms, all of you are doing all day, every day, we finally get to retirement and we earn less benefits there too. Why? Because we earned less for doing the same work every day of our lives. Enough. From one mom to another, it's time for our government to stop prioritizing Wall Street and war and start prioritizing you. Start prioritizing all of us, our families, our kids, the communities we live in. These are the things that matter to me, and I think we deserve a president who they matter to too. I'm so proud to lead Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign to take back our country for all of us, because it's time to make America work for women.
Robert Kennedy Jr. announced he's creating a new political party to get on the ballot for his White House run.
Steve Large joining us now with the work ahead for Kennedy to get on the ballot here in California, though, Steve.
Yeah, and no question, obviously, Kennedy's name, part of American history. Now, Robert Kennedy Jr. wants to change America's future, not only for running for president, but also creating this new political party. It won't be easy.
Most democracies in the world have a variety of political parties.
Robert Kennedy Jr. seeking to crash party politics across the U.S. and here in California, filing paperwork to qualify a new party called We the People in hopes of gaining the party's nomination for president on the November ballot.
Well, it's going to be extremely difficult.
Tony Quinn has tracked California state political data for decades and says before We the People can qualify as a party in California, 75,000 people will have to register for it by June.
Problem is, nobody's ever heard of the party. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, I mean, you have some affinity to your own party. Getting people that are not registered to register is very difficult because it's very easy to register in California. Most everybody is.
The Democrats are frightened that I'm going to spoil the election for President Biden. And the Republicans are frightened that I'm going to spoil it for President Trump.
Recent polling shows a President Biden-Donald Trump head-to-head matchup is extremely close right now, making a Kennedy addition as a third-party candidate a problem for both sides.
From the Trump side, he's going to have to compete for a lot of the same people who are frustrated with today. The Biden people are going to have to figure out how do we deal with a guy who's criticizing our message, which is don't worry, be happy.
Seeking a path into presidential politics, could this Kennedy create his own party to do it?
Should be interesting. Besides California, there are 6 other states Kennedy is also trying to qualify his own party for, and he's also collecting signatures to get on the ballots of all 50 states. Of course, the last person that was able to do that as an independent was Ross Perot.
Of course, you hear the Kennedy name and you immediately start to pay attention,
right?
Just given the history.
He's got the name recognition for sure, and that's going to go a long way, probably.
Robert Kennedy Jr. announced he's creating a new political party to get on the ballot for his White House run. Steve Large has details on the work ahead for Kennedy to get on the ballot here in California.
Most democracies in the world have a variety of political parties.
Robert Kennedy Jr. seeking to crash party politics across the U.S. and here in California, filing paperwork to qualify a new party called We the People in hopes of gaining the party's nomination for president on the November ballot.
Well, it's going to be extremely difficult.
Tony Quinn has tracked California state political data for decades and says before We the People can qualify as a party in California, 75,000 people will have to register for it by June.
Problem is, nobody's ever heard of the party. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, I mean, you have some affinity to your own party. Getting people that are not registered to register is very difficult because it's very easy to register in California. Most everybody is.
The Democrats are frightened that I'm going to spoil the election for President Biden. And the Republicans are frightened that I'm going to spoil it for President Trump.
Recent polling shows a President Biden-Donald Trump head-to-head matchup is extremely close right now, making a Kennedy addition as a third-party candidate a problem for both sides.
From the Trump side, he's going to have to compete for a lot of the same people who are frustrated with today. The Biden people are going to have to figure out how do we deal with a guy who's criticizing our message, which is don't worry, be happy.
Seeking a path into presidential politics, could this Kennedy create his own party to do it?
And besides California, Kennedy is also trying to qualify his own party in 6 other states. He is also collecting signatures to get on the ballots of all 50 states.
Rumors are swirling about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s possible VP pick, and former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, has she entered the chat? One user posted, a source with connections to the Robert Kennedy Jr. campaign has told my X group of Kennedy 24 supporters that his rumored VP announcement date happens to coincide with his trip to Honolulu, Hawaii. Now, if this tidbit is true, then we can absolutely expect and assume Tulsi Gabbard will be the vice presidential choice of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. With her embrace of the center right these last few months, this very well could be a safe move for the Kennedy campaign. But just this morning, Gabbard announced a new partnership with Twitter, or X. Let's watch.
Free speech is something that a lot of us have taken for granted throughout our lives. It is fundamental to our rights that we have as Americans. Unfortunately, we live in a time where free speech is under attack. Lifting up your voice in dissent or challenge or questioning or even having a dialogue and debate is not only discouraged, it can be cause for retaliation or cancellation or censorship. We must defend our right to free speech.
Now, RFK Jr. continues to be a crow on the side of both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, as he seems to be the strongest third-party candidate since Ross Perot. While former President Trump still leads Biden overall, in Arizona, RFK has a respectable 10% support, in Florida 9%, in North Carolina 11%, and in Michigan 9%. RFK is even putting up solid numbers in places where Biden leads. In Virginia, RFK Jr. has 14% approval. Those numbers come from both Biden and Trump, as without RFK Jr. in the race, Trump and Biden both gain 7% support. So he's stealing equally from both candidates there. But the big news here is a potential Tulsi Gabbard VP. Let me put this to you. I understand why that would be very exciting to the 10% of the public that already likes RFK Jr. Is it broadening the coalition at all to pick someone who is so kind of occupying the same online and rhetorical space, a lot of issue overlap with respect to some of the independent COVID critiques of the deep state type moves, critiques of war? Very, very similar space. Is it actually going to improve his chances and generate excitement here?
Look, I see what you're saying. There is so much overlap. One wonders if it's a missed opportunity to bring in new people. But Tulsi Gabbard, extremely popular with a lot of conservative voters, audiences, et cetera. She's on Fox News a lot. I believe she's a Fox News contributor now. She's well known to the right. She obviously comes before that from the Bernie Sanders left, from your own worlds. She has, I think, a number of political positions that are, she might not see it that way, but you would probably see as very estranged from those views. So I don't know that she's would bring in all that many people from the left, but I could see her peeling off some Trump-type people, frankly. There's a lot of love for her in conservative media. I think going beyond what was just obviously there was appreciation for RFK Jr. in conservative media when it looked like he was just kind of hurting Biden from within the Democratic coalition. As soon as he moved out, that it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Remember what this guy said about the Second Amendment? Remember how he feels about environmental regulation? I don't know. Tulsi is pretty beloved. And she might get some favorable coverage. And then obviously I do think it seems like they're pretty in sync on where RFK Jr. wants to focus now on COVID tyranny and mandates. Frankly, even their foreign policy seems kind of in sync with the, non-intervention on Ukraine, but a full-throated defense of Israel.
Yeah, exactly. That cuts both ways, because I do think that Tulsi Gabbard might get more scrutiny for her, frankly, inconsistent views on Israel. She brands herself as someone who's against the warmongers, who's against money flowing out of the door to these regime change wars. This is what she often calls and often talks to them about, but feels very differently about Israel. Much like RFK Jr., Max Blumenthal has challenged Tulsi Gabbard to a debate on the issue of Israel-Palestine, which she has declined to take up on. And I do think that once she's in the spotlight, it might draw more attention to the inconsistencies within RFK Jr.'s own political program that drove so many people on the left who once supported him away, just like so many people on the left who once supported Tulsi Gabbard have changed their mind as she's kind of reinvented herself politically.
I think this will further drive away people on the left if they were interested in RFK Jr. I think that was kind of happening anyway, given that there are other more down the line left kind of people in the race, either within the Democratic side, like Marianne Williamson and Cenk Uygur, or the Green Party candidate, or Cornel West. There's a lot of places for the really left person to go for this, heterodox, some formerly left views maybe, very concerned about COVID, this foreign policy view taking from the right. I think this is actually a strong move to lean into that strategy. And I could see the RFK Tulsi ticket pulling even more from the right. Now, we should say this is just a rumor. It's a good rumor. If he's going to announce while he's in Hawaii, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know that Tulsi is actually signing up to do this because, like I said, she's a Fox News deal. She's just announced this partnership with Twitter that we just played that clip of. So that doesn't sound like gearing up for another foray into politics, but anything's possible.
So many presidential candidates get this accusation lobbed at them. Is this just about a book deal? So many presidential candidates do have books coming out. So, those things aren't mutually exclusive. Yeah. Campaigns are expensive. You have to fund them. Not everyone is a billionaire candidate like a Bloomberg or a Steve Phillips even is, I think, a billionaire. If not Dean Phillips, if not a multi-millionaire. I'm pretty sure he's a billionaire. So that's not such a criticism. But if this just is a branding exercise, it's such a good branding exercise. If I were judging this just on optics as opposed to whether or not it expands the political coalition, I'd give it an A+. So I am scrutinizing it from that perspective. It is also worth noting, focusing on the new deal with Twitter X, and we'll talk about this in more depth in a different segment, but Twitter is under significant criticism for launching a purge against left-leaning accounts that have been very, very critical, large accounts that have been critical of U.S. foreign policy with respect to Israel. 4 or 5 of those accounts got blocked last night, and what seems to some people like a coordinated effort that's out of step with the values of Twitter. Again, we'll talk about that in a different segment, but Glenn Greenwald and others who have been very consistent on the speech issue are raising questions about whether or not this issue is the red line that frankly exposes so much of the rhetoric about having an investment in free speech as exactly that, just rhetoric.
Yeah, we're going to delve into more of that a little bit later on the show, and we will have more Rising right after this.
Happening today on Oahu, a chance to meet independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy is hosting a public voter rally at the Ko'olau Ballroom in Kaneohe at 5 p.m. He will be discussing topics including the official ballot petition and his campaign message, Declare Your Independence. Kennedy says on his website, quote, "We will end the forever wars, clean up government, increase wealth for all, and tell Americans the truth." As of January 3rd, Kennedy is only on the Utah ballot. His supporters Tuesday formed the political party We the People in Hawaii and 5 other states. Besides campaign events, Kennedy spent his 70th birthday Wednesday surfing with a longtime friend, world surf champion Kelly Slater. They surfed together at Puana Point on Oahu's North Shore.
To 10, independent presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. is in Hawaii trying to raise money and signatures to get on Hawaii's ballot.
He's promoting himself as an alternative to the major parties despite some controversial views. Our Ben Gutierrez reports from Windward, Oahu.
The name Kennedy still carries a lot of weight in a state that is still heavily Democratic. But while the name is still a draw, many people came to see if that name is an alternative to Biden or Trump.
If you give me a sword and some ground to stand on, I will take your country back for you.
Robert Kennedy Jr., speaking with a chronic voice disorder at the Ko'olau Ballrooms in Kaneohe, is trying to get the signatures of more than 800 registered voters to get on Hawaii's ballot under a new party called We the People.
I said, all right, the polarization that is now destroying our country is more toxic than any time in the Civil War, and it's orchestrated. Of course, because they don't want us to see what they're doing with chronic disease, with taking our homes, with charging 22% interest on our credit cards.
Kennedy has been criticized for spreading conspiracy theories on a wide range of subjects, including who assassinated his father in 1968, prescription drugs and mass shootings, and vaccines, especially during COVID.
I'm not anti-vaccine. If people want vaccines, they ought to be able to take them. But I think that they ought to be regulated, and they ought to be tested with the same rigor as every other medication.
Tonight, he focused on his record as an attorney protecting the environment and health by challenging the government.
I've spent 40 years suing these agencies. I've sued almost every one of them.
A recent Gallup poll says Kennedy has higher favorability ratings than both Democrat Joe Biden and Republican Donald Trump.
I'm Kennedy curious. You know, I think it's exciting to finally have a third party that's viable, and I really like what Bobby said tonight, giving people an option that's not the lesser of two evils.
The remedy is Kennedy.
Absolutely, I believe it. He's worked for years, like he said, cleaning up corruption, and he'll do it when he gets in the White House, too.
The night ended with a long line of supporters waiting to get a quick photo with the candidate. Kennedy is starting his campaign by trying to get on the ballot in 6 states, including Hawaii. So far, he's only succeeded in Utah.
Do you think you can win?
I intend to win.
In Kaneohe, Ben Gutierrez, Hawaii News Now.